conversation. We'd like to welcome everyone back to Speak Out World. I'm your host, Jewel L.
I'm your host, Dino L.
And on today, we're continuing with a conversation that we had before, just about the power of voting. And we acknowledged Congressman John Lewis and his quote in terms of get into good trouble, get into necessary trouble. And so as we concluded on the part one, Dino L posed a question in terms of what it is that we can do to encourage folks to get out there and vote. We know that there's suppression, right? We understand the tactics, so what I want to encourage everyone to do, we mentioned it earlier before in the first segment of this conversation, but definitely early voting. If you have not registered to vote, I know for the state of Georgia, you have until October 5th to get registered to vote. If you moved, if you changed your address, if you changed your name, if you have not voted in the last 2 or 3 years, because we didn't get on this, but let's talk about the fact that there is purging, right?
Yes.
So you don't know if your name has been purged. You can definitely, still register to vote by October 5th and then start with early voting. I think that's one of the key things. Dino L, as you pose that question, early voting, and really, Sharon mentioned it earlier, education. Educate yourself regarding, because you got to check people's records, find out who's actually been in office serving the people and not serving themselves. So I want to pull back, and have Anise jump in there.
Yeah, Anise, tell us what we can do. What can we do to encourage our youth, those first-time, second-time voters, to understand the importance of casting their vote?
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things I would like to suggest is we make voting a family affair.
Yes.
And make everyone in the family responsible for the voters to continue on generation after generation. And how do we do that? We come from a culture where we would do oral storytelling about what has happened. We need to tell the stories about people in our family who have sacrificed.
Yes.
The unsung heroes and heroes in our own families who have sacrificed to have the right to vote. We need to pass these stories down to our children and let them value. We don't value voting. Voting is something like a rare antique or a precious stone that has been given to us from the forefathers when they started the Constitution of the United States. It was for everyone. And believe me, Abraham Lincoln, he was inspired through the Holy Scriptures. So he got his inspiration from God. So God has inspired man to write the kind of Constitution that we have. And the church needs to get involved in this way to encourage people to vote, for everyone to have an equal right to all rights in the United States, and not the racism.
Right.
Have the racism part played.
So our children, what specifically can we do to encourage them, our grandchildren, to take up that mantle after they hear the stories of our ancestors' struggles to have the right to vote? Because many of them are so engrossed in becoming rich or becoming successful that they don't even understand a lot of times what's actually going on in our society.
Right.
Many people don't understand that racism is institutionalized. And until we start dealing with that, we're going to have a difficult time trying to convince any of our youth the importance of voting. So we want to make sure that they are in line to do those things that are going to perpetuate a more equal society. And how do we do it?
Well, what about looking at it from this perspective, a rites of passage when you become 18? You know, because you become 18, you want to get your driver's license, you want to be able to do certain things young adults do, and let that be a part of the rites of passage for the family. You know,
why not being registered as soon as you turn 18? Why not being registered
absolutely.
to vote?
And let me just interject this. You don't have to wait until you're 18. You can actually register when you're 17 and a half. Oh, okay. You can register at 17 and a half as long as that you will be 18 on, when the election comes up. But if you're 17 and a half, you can register to vote.
Right.
Okay. And so, as you said, Anise, making that a part of it. I know you mentioned the fact of the church. I mean, the church has always been, especially within the African American community, a cornerstone in terms of civil rights. But also in the midst of COVID, you only have the churches meeting online, right? So you don't have that in-person, presence like you used to. I remember times that even though politicians would come visit the church and the church would take the stance that we are nonpartisan, it still allowed those politicians to be able to address the congregation, right? And I don't really see as much of that going on right now with COVID. However, I'm honestly quite not sure how the church is really making that move right now. And there may be some churches out there. So I don't want, we get like, hey, my church is doing voter registration. I mean, and I'm sure that there are some, but how do we keep that momentum up in a lot of churches when we're facing COVID? You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So I don't know, Anise, if that's something that you want to address.
Well, I guess I was looking at the fact of the inspiration historically with Abraham Lincoln. Getting a lot of his way he moved into politics because he was inspired through the Bible. And I guess I was just looking at the moral aspect of voting. Vote with someone with good character from that perspective. So I don't know. I guess just looking at the moral aspect of candidates. That they're concerned about equal rights for all people.
And it seems like we've moved so far away from morality as far as our political elections are concerned.
I agree.
When you look at the candidate right now who is in office as president, some of the things that were said in previous elections would have prevented them from even running for president. So we have a society right now that it seems to be lost, that God is not in the mix right now as far as what the society and the direction the society is moving. I think we need to move back closer to him in order to make sure that we can continue to follow the American dream. I'm just wondering if they call it an American dream because so many people are asleep and don't really see what's going on in our society. But we have to wake up and understand that if we don't take this right to get out and vote in mass and vote early and vote by mail, but don't wait till the last minute to vote. Make sure that your names are on the roll so that you can vote. Then we're going to be in trouble. We're going to be in serious trouble as a nation.
Sharon, do you have anything to add to this? Because I have a comment too.
Well, I believe we need to have discussions. I would say I'm guilty. Well, I'm fortunate that I come from a family where we could sit down and have these discussions. If my sister and I had questions, we can ask my mom and dad, and they would, sit down and discuss it with us. But I realize not all families are like that. And we have to, just like you said earlier, make it a family affair. And one of the things that I also feel we need to do, and I know I was guilty of this in the past, I used to feel as long as I know I'm doing the right thing, everything else will work out. But it's just like John Lewis used to say. And I realized, sometimes you just don't want to get involved. But he said, if you see something wrong, do something. And more over the years, I've just witnessed things that were wrong. And I realized I, as a person, have to stand up, even if it's not for me. If I see something wrong, if I see somebody being targeted, I have to stand up, because ultimately it affects my environment as well, because I consider us all like a community, right? So for me, what I've been doing, a lot of times if I can't say something publicly, I'll make it in a video, or I'll do something graphically. But I started speaking out on social media about it, because it helps me to know that I'm not alone, and I'm pretty sure it helps others feel that way as well. And when certain things started going on after George Floyd was killed, I just started looking on social media, and I was amazed at how many people felt the same way I did. And all of a sudden I realized I am a part of a global community, so I needed to start acting like it. And by that, it means taking action. If I see something going wrong, do something about it, say something. Just sitting quietly is not going to help the problem.
No.
Yeah.
That's where I think I'm at now, is just encouraging people. Don't come to me and complain about something when you didn't vote.
Yes.
Don't complain about who's in office if you're not doing anything to help the change. We have to be proactive. And so now I consider myself an activist in that form, that I want to encourage everybody else to speak up, take action, do something for everybody that is being unjustly prosecuted right now, for communities that are being targeted, racism, all of it. I hate all of it. So I have to fight to make sure that I can help eradicate it. And I know it probably won't happen in my lifetime, but whatever I do to help.
Real.
Yeah, because it's like I love everybody. And I never was the type of person to even notice color until it was brought up to me. And then I'm like, well, why do you, and I believe you cannot be oppressed unless you let somebody do it. But when you keep people down constantly, I can see how their willpower
and self-esteem.
Yeah. So I understand that now. So and that's why I wanted to be a part of the Speak Out World team, when we decided to do this show, because everybody needs a voice. And sometimes they don't feel like they can go to their public official and say what's on their heart, but they can do it through a podcast. They can do it through art. They can do it through music. You don't speak that same language, yes. And you don't even realize that you're doing it. You do it through your poetry. Jewel and Dean do it through poetry. Yeah. Anissa and I like to write, do art. We love music. Use that voice however you can to get that message across.
Amen.
And that's encouraging our listeners to do.
Amen.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree with you. And I think we need to bring, Anissa, much respect for you, but I'm just saying, there are so much going on in the world, and so much protest. And you come from that generation, so it's hard to really reach people nowadays with kind of going back, to Abraham Lincoln. It's just kind of being honest, just like my take on it. We need to be able to give people some, concrete action tools in terms of being able to move out. And I guess having talked to a number of people on the ground in terms of doing voter registration, like they're not sitting down understand. They're not caring about anything that the forefathers said or did. Right now, they're looking at, listen, even with what they wrote, they weren't writing it for us. It wasn't never intended for us. Yes, because it is now the written word of the law of the land. It does help, right? It does apply to us. But I'm just saying that we have been over 400 years of dealing with systemic racism, dealing with Jim Crow laws, dealing with, we came out of slavery with absolutely nothing, homeless, uneducated, trying to build a family on the fact that we were free and we had the right to make our own decisions. And so to have all of that pull back from us in terms of with Jim Crow laws and the segregation and all the suppression. People are at a state right now where they're tired. They're honestly, just fed up, tired. You have COVID. They are feeling discouraged. And so, as Sharon said, having a creative outlet, that's the reason why I think you have so many people out protesting. They are speaking up about the injustice of the world, the systemic racism that's going on. And we got to be prepared in terms of giving these young people something in terms of how to make a change, because, you were once, growing up, in the 60s, during the civil rights era, you understand the anger, the frustration of feeling like, okay, well, my parents have had to struggle. My grandparents or your great grandparents, you realize, were even born into slavery and what that meant. So, again, with this podcast and this special lunch counter special that we're doing with us, it's an opportunity for us behind the scenes and for Dino and I in front of the scenes to be able to really speak out ourselves about an issue. And, and we'll definitely be back with all those inspirational stories that we want to encourage people during this particular time. But we know that we also have a voice that we want to be able to share. So I know, Anissa, I tagged you on in terms of with Abraham Lincoln. So I want to give you the opportunity for, to speak up about that.
Speak out.
Yes, I just referenced them is because they had a vision for the country. And we have to have a vision for the country and our community as well. And it was from that perspective, I'm telling young people, you have to have a vision for yourself in this country and being a part of the change.
And I want to say this about the youth of today. The youth of today is they're not having the types of conversations that we had back in the 60s. They're in the streets protesting for change now. They want change now. But we have to teach them that in the streets alone is not going to bring about that change.
Right.
That change has to be transferred over to the polling booth. And we have to march to that polling booth faithfully every election and vote for those politicians who have your best interests at heart. It's a choice that we have to make. And we have to ensure that the youth understand that saying it doesn't matter who is the president is a serious. When someone tells me that, I understand that I have failed. If they don't understand the importance of who is president or who is governor or who is mayor, then I fail. Because they should understand, as I understand, the importance of the vote over who's governing you. And in this census that's going out right now, it's going to affect hundreds of millions of dollars for those who do not participate in this census.
You're right.
For their communities. So we have to be informed, as you said, Shay. We've got to be smart about it, Anissa, as you were saying. The children have to be taught the lessons They have to understand those visions and make the difference in our society.
Yes, I agree.
All right now. Well, I mean, everything that has been said in the lunch counter today has been, I think, really amazing, because these are the conversations that we've had amongst ourselves. Yeah. And so, as a producer and niece on the show was just like, hey, well, why don't we have a lunch counter? And every now and then we do a little special on the show where the folks are able to hear from us behind the scenes on Speak Out World. And so I'm very, very thankful for this opportunity to be able to, for us to be able to share what's on our hearts right now. Mm-hmm. Before we get ready to close out, anybody have any closing thoughts or points? I'll start with you, Shay Shay.
For me, it's still all about knowing who you're voting for. Do your research. Don't just take it for granted what you see on TV or hear on the radio. Look up their names, see what they stand for, look at the policies that they are pushing, and see how it affects you and your family. Because the worst thing is to just go into the polling booth and not know anything about who you're voting for, their background, or the legislation that they're trying to push on you until it's too late and you can't change it then. So please, it's not hard to do. Just do your own research and vote your conscience and what is in your heart. That's all I ask you to do.
And Anise?
Yeah, I concur with Shay Shay, is know who you're voting for, why you're voting for this person, and know that your voice does count. Mm-hmm.
And I think I would add to that the fact that voting is a right. Like you said, Jewel, it's a precious stone.
Yes.
It's the jewel that we have. No pun.
Yeah, me said that, yes.
But we have to take that right as if it is the God-given right that it is for every individual to be informed about who they're going to vote for, to be informed about the issues that we're facing during a pandemic, during racial strife that's in the streets on a daily basis, during a pandemic where education is at a standstill and being done virtually. We have to understand the time that we're in right now and know that God is in control, but we have a free will to do those things that we're supposed to do, such as vote. So don't take it for granted. Make sure that you're enrolled to vote, that you're registered, and don't wait until the day of voting to vote. Vote early and make your votes count.
Yes.
Julio?
Yes. So with the little bit of time that we have left, with you all's permission, I would like to share my poem, Stay Woke Vote, as the way to wrap up the show. Okay. And this is called Stay Woke Vote. And it is in honor of everyone out there, no matter where you live, what state, what country, definitely stay woke and vote. We walk the line in history's time with a ballot as our word to make our voices heard. Voting is the foundation stone for political action, said Dr. King. One vote is a solo, but our votes together is a mass choir singing. We walk the line in history's time of violence, hangings, and bloodshed. In the midst of the charade, don't be fooled by the political game, cheating the voters in democracy's name. See, literacy tests, poll taxes, birthed from Jim Crow laws, purging voters within the Secretary of State walls, removing civic education from our children's academics, trying to kill us off in the midst of a pandemic. Don't be confused, live in fear or doubt that voting doesn't matter. Your one vote doesn't count. Thinking, I'll just stay at home and sit this election out. Understand, your silence will not protect you against representation for your taxation. No, your silence will not protect you from judges who sits on courts, senators representing your state, deciding who you will be allowed to marry as a mate. Your silence will not protect you from today's politicians making tomorrow's laws, change legislative policies, or help a movement's cause. But in the midst of it all, you must decide, my voice still matters. See, in 2008, we made history when we made the polls shatter. So, if you know your history, stay woke, vote. If you want to change the world, stay woke, vote. If you care about your future, stay woke, vote. And if you want to get into some good trouble, vote. And on that note, thank you all.
Julia, that was a great poem. And I have one that I want to share with the audience as well. It's called America, We Won't Wait. America, how long will you make us wait? While you lie to yourselves and procrastinate, we're still being killed in the streets, protesting to integrate into a society that continues to be marred with its institutionalized racism and hate. How long, not long, has been the cry for equal justice and equality? Instead, America, through police brutality and atrocities, what gives you the right to place your knee on our necks while we beg you to breathe? Even as we celebrate Juneteenth, how long do you expect us to wait until you realize that we too are free? America, haven't you seen with your own eyes the hurt, pain, and struggles that we face on a daily basis? I'm sure that by now you have seen the suffering faces of those who have died at the hands of white nationalists and our so-called protectors in blue, otherwise known as racists. America, we refuse to wait any longer while you debate the merit of our cases. It's time for our white brothers and sisters to take a stand and become anti-racist. Wake up, America, for we are at a crucial juncture in our history. Will you continue to insist that you're unaware and not understand our plight as blacks in this country? You can't keep dismissing it as a mystery. While the pandemic ravages our nation with loss of lives and social protests for Black Lives Matter fill our streets, silence is no longer an option because the bitter pill of hate is a deadly concoction. It's time to act now, America, before this situation erupts and becomes a civil travesty. And the America that we now know is no longer revered as the home of the brave and the land of the free. America, we won't wait.
Woo! I tell y'all on fire today.
On behalf of Speak Out World, we want to thank you for joining us on this part 2 of the Lunch Counter. and hearing our voices. And we want to tell you and for you to remember that you too have a voice.
Yes.
So make sure you speak